Please be seated. The court is now back in session, and the floor will be given again to the prosecution to continue their closing statement. You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. We left off talking about the principle of democratic centralism and how decisions were made in the Communist Party of Kampuchea. And I'd like to continue with that topic for a few more minutes before we start to look at the structure of the Communist Party of Kampuchea and the reporting rules for information going up and down from the top to the bottom of the Communist Party of Kampuchea. Your Honours, the principle and requirement of democratic centralism and collective leadership are also emphasised in the party's revolutionary flag publication. The September-October 1972 issue of the publication instructed that plans must be proposed by the collective in accordance with democratic centralism, and criticised local party secretaries who did not follow the principle as follows, and I quote, "In procedures, each level does not hold collective meetings for discussion and decision-making and conferences that draw out experiences. It focuses on isolation, which refers to the leader. Sometimes the appearance of a collective meeting is held, but Comrade Secretary does not promote democracy or encourage members to take problems into account in order to give some comments. The meetings are to mostly agree with the Comrade Secretary's report, with little or no discussion at all, just to kill the time. This also leads to weaknesses of the party's leadership quality. We must overcome these weaknesses as our stance. We must be aware that leadership does not allow or does not follow the collective, disrespects the collective, distrusts the collective, and disrespects the assignments. We must build a habit of respecting the collective and a stance of abiding by the assignments." Unquote. So, Mr. President, Your Honours, it's clear that the requirement of collective meetings and decisions was not a mere formality or something that was done just for appearances. The November 1976 issue of the Revolutionary Flag warned that, I quote, "When only one or two persons lead, or only one committee leads, every aspect of every matter is not seen." Unquote. The CPK circular entitled "What is the NCAR's ideology and the party's discipline?" contains the following explanation of the meaning of democratic centralism. Quote, "During the Assembly meeting, every party member has the right and freedom to express opinion, discuss, criticise, challenge, and give input to the political line, policy, slogan, objective, and the entire plan of the party leadership. Or you have the power to ask to review anything if he or she does not agree with the collective decision." Unquote. Your Honours, the evidence before you proves, beyond a reasonable doubt, that both Nguyen Chia and Khieu Samphan participated as members of the party centre in collective decisions on CPK policy and plans. The evidence includes numerous statements by Khieu Samphan and Nguyen Chia themselves expressing their admiration, support and agreement with Pol Pot and the party decisions. In his book, Cambodia's Recent History and the Reasons Behind the Decisions I Made, Khieu Samphan praises Pol Pot, praises his analysis of problems, stating that, quote, his suggested solutions usually proved to be correct, unquote, and that, quote, Pol Pot represented the historical leader who was never wrong when it came to making important decisions, unquote. And in the excerpts I would now like to play from the film Facing Genocide, Khieu Samphan further describes his relationship and support of Pol Pot.
Comme une ombre.
I followed him all the time like my shadow. What did he say at these meetings? He talked about the present political situation and patriotic awareness. In combination with awareness of class and the party, sacrifice, heroism. He expected of all of cadres that they should live and think like peasants. And I tried very hard, but I couldn't. Then there was the problem of the Marxist contradiction. Everything is static, yet everything changes. The party is everything. Do people think like that now? In general, you are not meant to react when something happens. You shouldn't feel any joy or any regret. Try to analyze the event coldly. Find what is negative and what is positive for the movement and try to take action. I can see him in the Cardamom Mountains, here and there. I have always his image in my head. Do you miss Pol Pot? Because he had such an exceptional mind for us. That's it.
Mr. President, the next statement from Khieu Samphan demonstrates his absolute support for the leadership of Pol Pot.
They present Cambodia, Pol Pot, demonize Pol Pot so that people can forget that. They accuse Pol Pot of being a dictator and use the word genocide. It's wrong. A great leader of such a movement could not act like that. If he did, he wouldn't have been able to have created this movement. And I'm going to shout that out at the trial.
Mr. President, so far we haven't seen any shouting from Khieu Samphan in this trial. It remains to be seen whether Khieu Samphan will ever stand up in this courtroom and reveal his true self, the man who supported, agreed with and stood by the side of Pol Pot for nearly 28 years. While the real Khieu Samphan remains hidden, we at least see glimpses at times of the real Nguyen Chia, the uncompromising revolutionary willing to sacrifice anything or anyone in the name of Angkar. In his interviews with Tet Sambat, Nguyen Chia spoke relatively openly about his relationship with Pol Pot. In the clip you're about to see, you'll see Nguyen Chia discussing how Pol Pot became party secretary, but they decided to work as a team and always discussed issues of importance.
Let me tell you the truth about when Pol Pot became party secretary was that actually I was supposed to become the party secretary after Tatu. Tatu was the former secretary and I was his deputy at that time. Since I noticed that Pol Pot was an independent person with analytical mind, and at that time we needed some intellectuals to join a revolution. So I thought that I was not. But other people thought that I was one of the intellectuals, but I was not. I was intellectual in lower level. So I told Pol Pot that at such situation, I became party secretary, I would not be appropriate and would not benefit the party. I requested Comrade to take the duty, requested Pol Pot to become party secretary. He considered for a while and he accepted, but we needed to coordinate the work. That was the case, so he became party secretary since that time. That was one thing, and one more thing I forgot.
Mr. President, the next clip describes the very close working relationship he had with Pol Pot. And in relation to Nguyen Chia's remarks that he wasn't intellectual enough to be the party secretary, we'll make some comments on that further in our submissions.
Uncles in 1960s, when Pol Pot wanted to do something, he always discussed with you. So did he keep his promise with you? Response: well, he did for some issues. Sometimes it was not meetings. It was just like a consultation in order to exchange ideas rather than formal meetings. It was not a picture of meeting, but if there was a meeting, it should have a comfortable seat, but it seemed just a normal meeting because he said, quote, "Comrade, come on, I have a problem and I would like to discuss with you," unquote. So it was called consultation, which aims to compare opinions outside a meeting. To do that consultation, it can settle the problem more quickly. If there were problems, we could connect to each other even more as quickly as possible. As I said, no need to have a proper meeting. Just come and meet and share and exchange ideas.
Your Honours, the next clip, Nguyen Chia was asked whether there were any areas of disagreement between him and Pol Pot.
Question: did you and Pol Pot ever have any harsh discussion when you were in power during 1975 through 1979? Nguyen Chia: there was none. There was none between 1975 and 1979. There was no serious problem.
Mr. President, also in an interview Nguyen Chia gave in October 2006, he again made it clear that party decisions were made collectively according to the principles of democratic centralism. And I quote, question, so did Pol Pot have sufficient capability to control the entire movement? Nguyen Chia: on that, it was not by himself. Everyone worked together. He made his contribution. We made ours. Question: during the democratic Kampuchea era, did Pol Pot have a monopoly over power? Or, answer, no. The collective democracy concentration, democratic centralism, unquote. Your Honours, the next subject I would like to discuss is at the heart of the accused's criminal responsibility, and in this case, it's the authority and reporting structure of the CPK and the democratic Kampuchea regime. The evidence before this chamber proves beyond a reasonable doubt that in the years preceding the 17th of April 1975 and throughout the entire DK period, the party centre leaders received regular and detailed reports from the zones, military and other organisational units. While the Khmer Rouge destroyed many of these records before fleeing into the mountains in January 1979, a significant collection of reports and telegrams survived, from which a clear picture emerges of, 1, the nature of the information that the party leadership received from the base, 2, the control and authority of the party centre over all regional and military organisations, and 3, the criminal plans and policies of the party centre that were systematically implemented by those organisations. Simply put, any claim by the accused that they were unaware of the arrests, the killings, the food shortages, the problems of disease and starvation throughout Cambodia, or that zones acted autonomously and without direction from the party centre, is shown by the surviving records to be a gross distortion of the truth. During this trial, the court has heard extensive testimony from CPK cadres who were responsible for the reporting and communication of information, the transmission and decoding of telegrams, and the delivery of those telegrams and other reports and messages to and from the party leaders, both before and after the 17th of April 1975. The evidence has proven that an organised system of reporting began in the early 1970s when the party leaders were based at the S-71 headquarters on the Chinit River. Witness Nong Sapang began working the telegram unit at the CPK headquarters in 1973. He testified that, I quote, each base, zone and sector and every unit of a division, quote, was required to have a communication section and telegrams. He described both the incoming telegrams that came from the base and the front lines, which included reports on the situation in the battlefields, and the outgoing telegrams, which were directives from the upper authority for the lower authority to implement, including measures, instructions, circulars for implementation at the base. Nong Sepang specifically testified in this period, prior to April 1975, the telegram communications included instructions to attack particular targets and requests from the base for ammunition and weaponry so that the attacks could be done effectively. Kim Vun, who was also working at the party's Chinit River headquarters in the pre-1975 period, confirmed that the party leaders received telegrams reporting on the practical situation in each respective battlefield, including the battlefields surrounding Phnom Penh. Your Honours, with regard to the frequency of telegram communications in the pre-17th of April period, Nong Sepang testified that he sometimes had to, and I quote, work the whole day and night in order to send those telegrams out, unquote, and further explained, I quote, as far as the telegrams are concerned, the frequency of telegram communication depended on the actual situation of the respective zones. For example, if there was contentious battles, then the telegrams were sent 24 hours around the clock. But for zones that were already liberated, then the telegram communication was less frequent. For example, the East Zone had to communicate very often. It had to operate 24 hours a day, unquote. The testimony of these witnesses that a reporting structure was already in place in the early 1970s is confirmed by the September-October 1972 issue of the Revolutionary Flag, in which the party provided instructions to improve the quality of reporting from the base to the upper level. The publication specified that a mandatory work principle was to report on a clear and regular basis, and that reports from the base should not be limited to military activities. It listed 4 subjects that were to be included in the reports. 1, the enemy. 2, people. 3, all working activities. And 4, resolutions and directions. This appears to have been the origin of the standard reporting format that we consistently see in the reports from the DK period, which begin with a section on the enemy situation, following by a section on the livelihood of the people and the status of work activities, such as rice production and the building of dams and canals. Your Honours, the 1972 issue of the Revolutionary Flag concluded as follows, and I quote, "Reports have 2 forms, simple and special. In order for us and the senior levels to take hold of a situation clearly and to provide practical instructions, we must report in clear terms and cite short and concrete examples. A report must be systematic, disorderly information must be avoided, clear and regular reports to the upper levels help them grasp and master the situations, resulting in direct and timely advice. We must practice indoctrination within and outside the party, communicate this line of reporting that is our work procedure. Without reports, we cannot lead and work," unquote. Your Honours have heard testimony from Pipon and other messengers who delivered messages and letters from the party leaders based at the Chinook River headquarters to the zones in the pre-1975 period. P. Pon accompanied Pol Pot and Nguyen Chia on trips to the zones, where they would meet with the zone committees, conduct study sessions, and give detailed instructions regarding the specific situation in a particular zone or sector or district and what measures needed to be done. Unquote. The CPK leaders also used written circulars during this time to communicate party lines and policies. The September 1972 issue of Revolutionary Flag instructed zone, sector and district committees how to implement circulars in their regions so as to ensure countrywide unity of the party line. Your Honours, this evidence proves that a centralised reporting, communication and organisational structure was already in place well before April 1975. It proves that the party centre leaders were receiving reports 24 hours a day on the situation in the battlefields as CPK troops fought towards and entered Phnom Penh. And most importantly, it proves that the party centre had effective control of the zone military divisions and authority to implement party lines and policy decisions in all zone organisational units. The same basic reporting and authority structures continued after the CPK leaders took power on the 17th of April 1975. The party statute required all branches, districts, sectors, committees to maintain a system of reporting to the upper echelon on their situation and work, and required zone committees to report to the Central Committee on the situation and the work of the zone. The 30th of March 1976 decision of the Central Committee refers to a regime of weekly reporting to Office 870. In regards to the reporting structural system that was in place during the DK period, the trial chamber heard detailed testimony from Nong Sapang regarding the K18 telegram office in Phnom Penh, testimony from Suan Kinil regarding the Central Zone telegram office, and testimony from Pan Van, alias Kam Pan, regarding the receipt and transmission of telegrams by the Sector 105 office in Mondulkiri. Each of these witnesses authenticated telegrams and reports that have been admitted by this chamber, as did other zone and sector cadres who were able to confirm the accuracy of information discussed in the telegrams and reports sent to the party centre. The chamber has also heard from several witnesses who authored these telegrams and reports, including Sector 105 Secretary Sao Sarun and Division 801 Deputy Secretary Hung Ren. Nong Sapan and other cadres who worked at the K offices in Phnom Penh also testified to the procedures by which telegrams and reports were distributed to the party leaders. In general, copies of telegrams were prepared for all members of the Standing Committee and for Office 870. Un Tan, who worked as a Chief of Security at K1, testified in this trial that at least 2 or 3 times each day he received and delivered an envelope of documents to Pol Pot, who would forward the documents to Nguyen Chia after he had read them. Your Honours have also seen that many of the telegrams from the DK period have a CC or distribution list in which Uncle Nuon is regularly included as one of the recipients. Here is one example of the standard distribution list that we see in many of the DK telegrams. As you see in this distribution list, one of the copies of the telegram was provided to Office, Brother Nuon, Brother Q, Brother Van, Son Sen and Yang Sari. Norm Sepang testified that the copy marked for Office was received by Brother Dun and maintained at Office 870, while the copy marked for archive or documentation was kept at the K18 Telegram Office. Your Honours, the evidence before you proves that Q Sampan either received or had access to the copies of telegrams and reports that were maintained by Office 870. Q Sampan admitted in his interview with the co-investigating judges that he and Doohan were the only two members of the Office 870 committee, also known as Political Office 870, and that Doohan was arrested and disappeared in 1977. In a 2005 interview, Q Sampan admitted that one of Doohan's functions at Office 870 was to receive zone reports that were sent to 870. The only reasonable conclusion from these facts is that Q Sampan had access to the telegrams and reports sent to Office 870 during the period he and Doohan were the only two members of Office 870 committee, and that it was Q Sampan who took over for the responsibility for the receipt and maintenance of such documents at 870 after Doohan's arrest in February 1977. Your Honours, this conclusion is supported by the testimony of Doik, who stated that, and I quote, "all documents were in the hands of Q Sampan," unquote. It's also confirmed by an important piece of evidence, testimony that was provided by Peepon during this trial. Like Doik, Salif Ban, David Chandler and Philip Short, Peepon testified that it was Q Sampan who replaced Doohan as the chairman of Office 870. Peepon's testimony was based on his day-to-day work experiences as the head of administration at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. From time to time, Peepon's boss, Yang Sari, needed to send letters or other communications to the provinces. Communications from Phnom Penh to the zones, as well as communications from zones to the leaders in Phnom Penh, all went through Office 870. After the arrest and disappearance of Doohan, Peepon was instructed by Yang Sari that Doohan had been replaced by Q Sampan and that Peepon was henceforth to contact Q Sampan when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had letters to send to the zones. Peepon testified that he delivered such letters to Q Sampan at K1 or K3 and that Q Sampan told him he would arrange for the delivery or transmission of the letters to the zones. Your Honours, this evidence proves two critical issues in this trial. First, that Q Sampan succeeded Doohan as the chair of the Office 870 committee, and second, that Q Sampan's responsibilities at Office 870 included the receipt and delivery of communications between Phnom Penh and the zones. In addition to his role at Office 870, where copies of telegrams and reports were sent and maintained, Khieu Samphan was one of the party centre leaders, along with Nguyen Chia and Pol Pot, who regularly participated in standing committee meetings where reports from the zones would be discussed and meetings between the party centre and leaders from those zones and sectors, oral reports were made on the same matters. The guards from K1 and K3 who have testified in this trial have consistently identified Khieu Samphan and Nguyen Chia as two of the party leaders who regularly participated in meetings with zone and sector leaders when they came to Phnom Penh. That testimony, Your Honours, is corroborated by the minutes of the 8th of March 1976 Standing Committee meeting on base work, a document that records Khieu Samphan and Nguyen Chia's presence at a meeting at which the secretaries of Siem Reap, Sector 106, and Priya Vahia, Sector 103, and the Deputy Secretary of the North Zone reported to the party centre leaders on the situation in the regions, including the arrest of enemies, rice production, the construction of paddy dikes, and the health and livelihood of the people. Your Honours, the evidence that is before you proves beyond a reasonable doubt that both of the accused received reports and participated in meetings at which they were informed of the situation in the zones and autonomous sectors that formed democratic Kampuchea. If I can now turn to the content of those reports, in paragraph 203 of the written closing submission of Nguyen Chia, he does not dispute that he received reports from the secretaries of the zones and autonomous sectors, but claims that the information contained in those reports was limited or incomplete because the information had passed through multiple levels on its way to the party centre. This is an argument that can be assessed and dismissed rather easily, simply by looking at the telegrams and reports that were actually sent to Nguyen Chia and the party centre. Let us start with the telegram that was sent by East Zone Secretary Sao Pim, using his alias Chon, to Pol Pot on the 21st of March 1976. The distribution list at the bottom of the telegram indicates that copies were provided to Brother Nguyen and to the office. In the first paragraph of the telegram, the party centre leaders were informed that an East Zone unit had captured 5 Vietnamese who were hiding in the forest. 2 of them were shot dead, and the other 3 who were being detained at security. The second paragraph of the telegram discusses the interrogation of an individual who had allegedly thrown a grenade and sought to oppose the construction of a rice paddy dike. The telegram reports, I quote, "We beat him up during interrogation about his organisational links and got onto more than 20 more of them in the grassroots of Priya Sadek district," unquote. Your Honours, this is a rather short telegram, and yet it reports executions, detentions, and the use of torture in an interrogation of a detainee in order to discover his organisational links. It is completely at odds with Nguyen Chia's claim that the North Zone leaders concealed from the party centre what was going on in their regions. And as we will see, this telegram was not an isolated exception. Rather, it's representative of the types of reports that were sent to the leaders in Phnom Penh on a daily basis throughout the DK regime. If we can look at another region, the Mondulkiri province, or Sector 105, another autonomous sector that reported directly to the party leaders in Phnom Penh. This is a telegram from Chan to Office 870. It was sent on the 20th of May 1977 by Sector 105 Secretary Lang under his alias Chan. We heard testimony in this trial from Lang's son, Cam Pan, who worked at his father's office for a period of time sending and receiving telegrams. As you may recall, Cam Pan testified that his father reported to and received instructions from Nguyen Chia on matters relating to security. In this telegram, Sector Secretary Lang reports in paragraph 2 on the arrests of Tu Yuan. In paragraph 3, he reports on a suspected internal enemy, noting that, I quote, "activities continue one after the other, but we are making arrest and arrest too," unquote. Your Honours may recall that Sector 105 Secretary Lang died in the fall of 1977, allegedly shot by his deputy during a trip to Phnom Penh. He was replaced as Sector Secretary by Sao Sarun, a witness who appeared and testified in this trial and who identified a number of telegrams that he sent to Office 870. This is a telegram that was sent by Sector Secretary Sarun on the 9th of April 1978. It describes in full detail an incident in which 2 boats were lost due to a gasoline fire. Despite this being an apparent accident, 2 of the crew members from the boat were arrested and, along with the 3rd man, identified as the contemptible Lean, who had been implicated in interrogations of the crew members. The evidence before Your Honours includes a statement from the brother of Sector 105, Cadre Kang Lean, who describes how Lean disappeared after a boat fire on these boats, and a prisoner list from S21 recording that Sector 105 Commerce Assistant Kang Lean was imprisoned at S21 as of June 1978. The next telegram, Your Honours, is another telegram, was sent by Sector 105, Sector Secretary, on the 23rd of April 1978. The distribution list for this telegram includes Uncle Nguyen and Office, and this copy of the telegram also contains a written annotation, Uncle Nguyen, in the upper left-hand corner. Nong Sapang testified that this is how the head of the K-18 office marked telegrams that were of particular importance to a specific leader. In the 3rd paragraph of this telegram, Sector Secretary Sarun seeks instructions from the party centre regarding a sector cadre who had an affair with a woman, indicating that both the man and the woman have been arrested. Sarun also reports that the cadre had been previously implicated in the confession of the traitor A. Chun, at which time the sector monitored his activities. Your Honours, Chun was the former head of the Commerce Office in Sector 105. He was arrested and sent to S21, and as reflected in the telegram and admitted by Sao Sarun, the names of Sector 105 cadres implicated in his S21 confession were communicated to the sector for them to follow up. This telegram concludes with a request for Ankar's opinion on the penalty and where the arrested cadre should be sent. Your Honours, as with other documents we have just seen, this telegram completely refutes the assertion of the Nguyen Chia defence that zone and sector secretaries did not fully inform the party centre of events in their regions. The last 2 telegrams we looked at reported to the party leaders in Phnom Penh in detail about a fire on a boat and an extramarital affair. This is the level of scrutiny that was exercised by the party centre over the people of democratic Kampuchea. Everything was closely watched and monitored by Ankar. The slightest of mistakes, knocking over of a kerosene lamp on a boat, viewed as an act of treason and reported to the top leaders in Phnom Penh. This, Your Honours, was the harsh reality of the society that was created and presided over by Nguyen Chia, Khieu Samphan and the other leaders of the CPK. Reports from other zones contain the same level of detail and the same disclosure of arrests, interrogations, killings and witch hunts for networks of enemies, spies and traitors. If we look at a telegram from the North East Zone dated the 15th of June 1977, the distribution list includes Uncle Nguyen and office. It describes the arrest and questioning by Division 801 of 209 Vietnamese soldiers of Jarai ethnicity, one of the minority groups that lives in the mountains between Cambodia and Vietnam. The second part of the telegram reports the confessions of contemptible persons burrowing within rubber and cotton plantations, accused of being parts of networks of various traitors. The telegram concludes by requesting a decision of the highest level. Cham Say, the chief of the Division 801 Security Office, testified in this trial that this large group of Jarai detainees was later brought to his prison and executed en masse, pursuant to orders conveyed through the North East Zone office. Your Honours have seen many of the telegram's reports from the North Zone Secretary Kang Chap, alias Say, over the course of this trial, and they contain similar detailed reports to the party describing events in that zone. I'll be discussing a few of those telegrams in more detail later, but for the time being, I will simply note that the 10th of April 1978 telegram from Zone Secretary Say to Committee 870, copied to Uncle Nguyen and office as another example of the subject matters that were routinely reported to the party centre leaders. This telegram discusses in detail the external and internal enemy situation in the North Zone, as well as the livelihood of the people. In Section 3 of the telegram, the Zone Secretary describes the ongoing purge of Sector 103, Preah Vihear Province, including those who oppose our revolution openly and secretly. He then describes the arrest of one of those cadres, reporting as follows, and I quote, "We would like to specify and report about female comrade TCW 547, who is the wife of comrade. This female comrade was implicated by many enemies, so I decided to remove this female comrade and brought her to stay at the Zone Office 801 so that she will not be able to continue her traitorous activities anymore." Unquote. Your Honours, after the party centre was notified of her arrest, the female cadre described in this telegram, TCW 547, was transferred to Phnom Penh and held at the temporary detention offices on the riverside. Fortunately for her, the Khmer Rouge were chased out of Phnom Penh the following week before she could be transferred to S21. Her interview with investigators from the Co-Investigating Judge's Office is part of the record and has been omitted by this chamber. Your Honour, the documents we've been looking at so far represent shorter reports that were sent by telegram. We know from the testimony of the cadres who worked at the telegram offices in Phnom Penh and the zones that each region would generally send one telegram per day to the party centre. The frequency of the telegram communications can also be confirmed by looking at a series of telegrams sent from a particular region, which telegrams are numbered sequentially. In addition to the daily telegrams, the zones also sent weekly and monthly reports to the party centre, which described in even more detail the situation in their regions. E3-1094 is the monthly report from the West Zone for July 1978. The original Khmer report is 14 pages long, and the English translation is 16 pages. The first half of the report is dedicated solely to reports on the enemy situation and purported enemy activities in the West Zone, describing in detail, sector by sector by sector, district by district, and even by individual cooperatives, individuals who had been arrested, interrogated, or executed in those regions, as well as persons suspected of being enemies. E3/179 is a report from the Northwest Zone for the period of the 4th to the 29th of May 1977. And E3-1179 is a Northwest Zone report for the period 24th of May to the 7th of June 1977. Like the report from the West Zone, they contain detailed information on enemies, rice production, available food supplies, and the health of the people for the various sectors in the Northwest Zone. Because these reports are lengthy, I won't go through them in detail, but they are important documents when you consider the claim of the Nuon Chea defence that the information reported to the party centre by the zones was limited in nature. I do wish to direct Your Honour's attention to Section 2 of a 29th of May 1977 report from the Northwest Zone, which discusses the people situation in the zone. Contrary to what we have heard from the accused throughout this trial, the Northwest Zone made very clear in its reports the food shortages and health problems of the people who were living there. In this document, the Northwest Zone reports as follows, and I quote, "People's living standard is a shortage in many regions. Now, people in regions 1, 2, 4, 6 and 7 are the most needy. Most people at support bases eat thin rice soup." Unquote. In the next paragraph, the zone reported that shelters for people had finally been built so that, quote, "there have now been no people without lodging and sleeping on the ground as there were in 1975 and 1976, unquote. Your Honours, this is hardly the picture of a zone that concealed food shortages or livelihood problems from the party centre. When Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan claim that they did not know that the hundreds of thousands of people they sent to the Northwest Zone lacked sufficient food, shelter and medicine, they are clearly lying. Your Honours, the entire purpose of the detailed reporting to the party centre leaders was so that they could provide advice and instructions to the zones, military and other organisations. As stated in the September 1972 issue of the Revolutionary Flag, quote, "Clear and regular reports to the upper levels help them grasp and master the situations, resulting in direct and timely advice," unquote. This fundamental directive to the base was reiterated at the end of the Standing Committee's 8th of March 1976 meeting with the leaders of the North Zone and sectors 103 and 106. And I quote, "Send general reports, send reports through various spearheads, propose short reports by telegram, All this so the Standing Committee knows the situation in order to provide timely instructions," unquote. Your Honours, we've seen that many of the telegrams sent to the leaders in Phnom Penh ask for instructions or advice, and the witnesses have testified before this chamber confirming that the party leaders responded to the telegrams. Sector 105 Secretary Sao Sarin testified that his telegrams were always responded to, usually by Pol Pot or Nguyen Chia. Nong Sapang described the outgoing telegrams sent by Office 870 as directives from the upper authority to the lower levels that covered all aspects of the country. Your Honours, the basic authority structure of the CPK, including the relationship between the centre and the zones, was defined in the party statute, which designated the Central Committee as the highest operational unit throughout the country. If we look at Article 23 of the CPK statute, it assigned to the Central Committee the responsibility, quote, 1, to implement the party political line and statute throughout the party, and 2, instruct all zone and sector city organisations to carry out activities according to the political line, unquote. If we look at Article 27, with respect to the military, it provides that the Revolutionary Army of Kampuchea must be under the absolute leadership monopoly of the Communist Party of Kampuchea. As members of the Central Committee and as part of the small group of the party centre leaders that govern the country on a day-to-day basis, both Nguyen Chia and Khieu Samphan had authority over and responsibility for the zone and military cadres who carried out the crimes that are the subject of this trial. The defence theory that zones acted autonomously is also refuted by the documents that record the decisions and policies of the party centre. Circulars issued by the Central Committee, the Revolutionary Flag publication, and meetings of the Standing Committee. These documents show an authority structure in which the party centre made decisions and oversaw the implementation of party lines and policies by the zones, military and other DK organisations. A clear example of the authority of the Central Committee is the circular it issued on the 20th of June 1978, revising the party policy towards enemies. In this document, the Central Committee identified a number of groups who would no longer be considered enemies. It also made clear that the party would still eliminate persons who refused to change their minds and continue to be resolute in opposing the CPK. This document alone conclusively refutes the defence assertion that zones acted autonomously when conducting arrests and executions of enemies, and prove that this was a matter over which the party centre exercised control. The authority and control of the party centre can also be seen in the monthly Revolutionary Flag publication, which provided instructions and guidance to party members on the implementation of party lines and policy. Some of the issues of Revolutionary Flag contained speeches that were given by representatives of the party centre at zone congresses, in which it's crystal clear who was the superior and who was the subordinate. A good example of this is the August 1977 issue of the Revolutionary Flag, which published a speech given by a party centre representative on the 25th of July 1977 at the West Zone Cadre Conference. The authority relationship is clear from the very opening remarks of the speech. I quote, "I wish to make a presentation regarding the instructions of the party on a number of important matters for implementation in the second semester of 1977. These are important issues that must be implemented from now until late 1977. As I have learned from the reports of the zone these past several days, the comrades in every sector have already studied these party instructions. However, on the opportunity to learn from the model district, Kampong Tralak Lao, the Zone Committee joins me in seeing that it's necessary to further disseminate and clarify these instructions. Therefore, the instructions which we clarify at this time are to absolutely achieve 3 tonnes and 6 tonnes, to achieve attacking and cleaning out the enemy, and to absolutely build party leadership." Unquote. This speech included a detailed discussion of the ongoing purge of the West Zone, in which purged cadres were described as germs and rotten flesh that had to be shed. The party centre representative complained about the people in the West Zone and the presence of no good elements and traitors, stating, and I quote, "Take the example of the West Zone, where 50% are not good. It seems like all of them, but in truth, only 50% are not good. Among that 50%, they are not all traitors. Only 15 to 20% are traitors." Unquote. So in describing the enemies in the zone, the party centre representative noted that many cooperatives were controlled by former regime soldiers and Kampong Sam businessmen. He directed zone cadres to look for embedded enemies by reviewing the background and class composition of cooperative committees, and he instructed that, and I quote, "It is imperative to prepare forces to attack and smash the enemy and the no elements embedded inside and controlling the cooperatives. Use which forces to attack. This problem is not just in the West Zone. Every zone throughout the country is like this. Therefore, it cannot be ignored. It is imperative to see that the cooperatives are still controlled by the enemy and other classes." And he specifically instructed that at least 50% of the cooperatives in the zones were to be clean in accordance with the class line by the year end, and that 100% were to be clean by 1978. And the issue of the revolutionary flag concluded with the following notice, and I quote, "Propose that every leadership echelon in the party concentrate on examining, discussing and studying this presentation conscientiously in order to take it for implementation to the respective zones."
President, thank you, Prosecutor. Today, proceeding has come to a conclusion, and we will resume it on Monday, the 21st of October 2013, commencing from 9 a.m. We also would like to inform the parties and the general public that on Monday next week, the floor will be again given to the prosecution to conclude their closing statement. And this information is also applied to the support staff. Security guards started to take the two accused, that is, Kirstenpon and Nunji, to the detention facility of the ECCC and returned them to participate in the proceeding on Monday morning. before 9 a.m. and notice shall be taken. Notice will be taken to the holding cell downstairs, which is equipped with audiovisual equipment for him to follow the proceeding remotely. The court is now adjourned.